it is. So we're going to call the meeting to order of the Social and Human Capital Committee of the Cook County Social Innovation Commission. I'm Roger Cooley with the Chicago Food Policy Action Council, one of the co-chairs with Jerry Aglape, who's the other co-chair. Thank you for coming on board. I'm very excited to partner with you in this project for the committee. And I think one of the first things we need to do, make sure I'm getting this all correct, is to do a roll call of the membership. And as we go through, since we're still getting to know each other a bit, if you could give your name, what organization you're with, your role, and what you're hoping to get from the meeting today. So we'll start with Lynette.
Hi, Lynette McCrae, Director of Neighborhood Strategy at Black Chicago Tomorrow and member of this committee for maybe the past 2 or 3 months. And I'm hoping to get a little bit closer to, some clear goals for what this group can do specifically and add value, particularly as it relates to supporting wealth building across the city and the county.
Thank you, Lynette. Harry Austin. Okay, I don't believe Harry's here. Mirage Sheik. Do not believe is here yet. Camille Kerr.
Hey everyone, I'm Camille Kerr. Pronouns are she or they. I have 2 roles, multiple roles. One as founding partner of Upside Down Consulting. I'm also a co-founder of Shy Fresh Kitchen, which is a worker cooperative co-owned by 5 formerly incarcerated individuals. And I'm on the board of Urban Growers Collective and E.G. Wood as well. So a couple local nonprofit and cooperative development organizations. And I'm here today. One thing I hope to continue to build with you all, incredible group of people. Love having the opportunity to be in space and innovate with everyone. And I agree with Lynette that getting from the larger set of values that we jointly have articulated into more concrete activities and action plan would be really exciting. To see that movement would be great during this meeting.
Great. Carrie Thomas, who I do not believe is here. Jerry Aglape.
Hi, Jerry Aglape, the Midwest Director for Small Business Majority.
David Cherry.
Yes, David Cherry, City Leader of the All Stars Project of Chicago. And, I'm just wanting to see how I could be supportive of us building up and the poor and working class people of Cook County, Illinois.
Great, thank you, David. Alderman Maria Haddon, I do not believe you're here. Karen Norrington Reeves is not here yet either. Olga Baptista.
Hi everyone, Olga Bautista. I'm with the Alliance for the Great Lakes. I'm a community planning manager, and I am really excited to hear from our speakers today.
Thank you, Olga. Sewell Anderson. Do not believe he's here currently. Um, and then Sophie Millam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Milam, actually, Sophie Milam. I'm with the Greater Chicago Food Depository, Senior Director of Public Policy. I lead our policy and advocacy team, as well as our benefits outreach team that works to enroll folks in programs like SNAP and Medicaid.
Great, thank you, Sophie. So pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, we do not currently have a quorum of members of the commission who are committee members. I'm not sure, Victoria or Cindy, if that has any impact on us moving forward at this moment.
No, it's just for the record, you don't have quorum, but the committees are non-voting, so it doesn't impact you from moving forward with the meeting agenda.
Okay, thank you. And pursuant to the Open Meetings Act as well, we'll now take public comment. It looks like Harry joined.
You did not receive public comment for the meeting today.
Okay. But as a reminder for folks who may be viewing via Facebook, public comment must be received 24 hours in advance of the meeting, and only comments relevant to the day's agenda are generally heard. Okay. We did not recirculate the notes from the last meeting. I apologize for not having that in hand in time. We'll work on getting those out for if there's any updates. We don't have formal minutes because of, as Victoria mentioned, we're not a non-voting committee, but we do have minutes or more notes that are then posted in the public record once we've said that everyone doesn't have any other updates to them, and we can recirculate them in between this meeting and the next meeting. Jerry, I don't know if you're up for going over the agenda that we talked up through the meeting, if you have it in front of you.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Sorry, it's on my screen.
And wanted to welcome Harry, if you could give a quick, while Jerry's getting that ready, introduction to yourself and what you're hoping to get out of today.
Now, let me first take myself off of mute and say good afternoon, everyone. For those that haven't met or don't remember or do remember, and I'm duplicating myself, Harry Alston, the Safer Foundation. And in that role there, most days, I'm responsible for strategic planning and fund development. And as you can imagine, sometimes fund development seems to be the drum that beats the loudest, even though I try to pay attention to the others. With respect to today, what I would really like to do is just kind of make sure we're all getting centered back on where we are, because it feels like it's been a bit a minute, as a NPR radio show says, and to kind of really talk more about the types of impact we want to try to have in terms of our input for the larger body.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you for asking, and good afternoon, everyone.
Jerry, if you were at the agenda ready.
Yeah, hi. So for the agenda that we have today, we're going to go over, as Roger said, we don't have the notes out, but was the minutes sent out? I think I saw that earlier.
It was the agenda.
Oh, because I thought there were notes that I just saw. Oh, it's the agenda. Okay, it says notes, not agenda. Sorry, the file says. So I'm looking at the right one. Were the minutes? So you said you didn't have the minutes that was sent out.
I can, as we go through it, I can go through the conversation today. I can pull them up and make sure folks have
Okay.
access to
All
them.
right, so noted. So the next item on the agenda is old business, and this is really a review of what the committee decided on our last call and convening, was that the two goals of the year that we would be working toward overall would be identifying recommendations to leverage county resources such as procurement. And the second goal of the year is equity in the workforce. I guess that's strengthening workforce development and what equity means in that. Want to open up for discussion if people have any questions about that, or if that could be a little bit more clear, because it is broad when we say leveraging county resources such as procurement. Do we feel procurement to be a goal, or to keep it broad as to leveraging county resources? And then when we're looking at the other goal of equity in the workforce, we just want to revisit that if people understand that, or if there are any questions or comments regarding that goal.
I guess the one thought I had on your initial question about leveraging county resources, I know we talked about procurement kind of as a way to leverage economic development and equity in terms of investment in terms of the purchasing power of the county. But I think there are probably other things that are emerging that we might want to capitalize on as well. So I'm not sure that we would want to just focus it only in that area, but that's just, a perspective I offer up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was just kind of looking at the first goal, and in support of your comment here, maybe even thinking about broadening that just a bit to include, identifying, well, let me not try to edit first. Let me get the thought out. I think the connections to economic opportunity and wealth building were explicit things that we've called out in previous conversations. So I think including something in here about identifying ways to leverage county resource or county authority in support of those things might be a way to frame that a bit more broadly. That would include procurement, and that could potentially include a number of other areas that we'll discover along the way.
Thanks.
And I think
sorry.
on the second, just on equity in the workforce, I would ask for a bit more. I think it would be helpful if we could just be a little bit more clear about what exactly we're talking about as far as equity in the workforce. And I'm not sure that I remember where exactly we landed with specificity, but I think it would be helpful to maybe draw that out a bit more clearly.
Yeah, I agree, Lynette. And I think maybe we want to just put a pause on that until we hear from the presentation that Karen Northington Reeves is going to provide. I was a little unclear about equity in the workforce as well. For me, I interpret that as workforce development for COVID-19 recovery. And it seems that maybe one of our goals here is, what are the ways that we would provide recommendations for the county to improve its resources, and the wealth building and economic development piece. in terms of leveraging resources. My question would be, if we were to make that a little bit more clarity, is like for whom, because it's about procurement. So we're talking about the businesses and the minority and women-owned businesses that have access to the procurement and contracts, and how they could actually build wealth as minority-owned businesses through their ventures, which is owning a business is the second best way to building wealth in this country. But we know that they don't have equitable access to procurement opportunities. So how can that be maximized? But that's how I'm looking at it from a small business lens. And I don't know if others want to weigh in on refining what that goal would be to help better drive what our action steps and assistance to the larger commission could be useful.
My thinking to both of those is that I like being explicit about trying to drive more robust participation of minority and women-owned businesses as a kind of explicit strategy by itself. But I also think the idea in terms of asking the larger question about if our concern is about broadening equity in terms of economic participation and wealth building across the county, then the larger question is beginning to identify what are the levers that the county can be called upon to use, either through the might of their funding or through the might of policies that can affect, fairly specific types of things, in which case, we want to get a little more strategic and targeted over time. On your point about equity in the workforce, I think those are two things. If you talk about workforce development related to CARES Act funding, I think that's one thing, but I think the other part of it is really raising the question about workforce development in terms of even employment opportunities in the county and other public sector and governmental agencies, because I really think there's as much a challenge there as there is in the private sector. Oftentimes, when you talk about where the distribution of employment opportunities actually are, so you got that broader workforce development question, and then the other side of it is what are the different things we can be more focused about, laser focused about, in terms of making sure that residents in Cook County and the Chicagoland area are prepared for the new world of work. And, to me, that goes beyond just training and education and credentialing for occupational pathways, but there are a whole host of other things that go along with that in terms of making sure that there are viable opportunities for folks to fill in certain sectors, and to do that in a much more intentional and equitable way. So that's just kind of, some commentary based on Lynette, what you and Jerry were just saying.
Jerry, you're muted right now.
Sorry about that. Let's move this into the next agenda item, which is legislation, which could address the how in terms of the goals, pulling this together, listening to the comments that Lynette, Harry, and David provided, which is the legislation that we discussed before was the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which I believe the commission, or Victoria, did you send something out about that in regards to the county as well, and the Jobs Act?
Yes, I had sent a copy of the resolution that the board approved last week to the chairs of this committee to see if there was, just to provide that update that the board did take that action in supporting this bill at the state level. And wanted to share that in case there was still any interest from the committee in potentially writing some type of letter of support or witness slip at the state level. But as far as the county, that has already taken place.
That's great. So that's something that we can deliberate on, and again, discuss a letter of support or recommending, a witness slip that can be put in for that legislation. The other bills is paid family medical leave. So that's actually should say not parental leave, but paid family medical leave on the agenda. That does not have a bill number yet, but that is also some of the context for that is that everybody is also waiting what's going to happen federally under the Biden-Harris administration as well. And we could also, as a group, discuss, do we want to recommend a statement on supporting the expansion of paid family medical leave and the need for this for county residents at that federal level, and if not at that federal level, additional legislation that's being considered in the state. Again, we don't have the bill numbers for that quite yet, but the Paid Family Medical Leave Coalition that's headed by Women Employed, and the sponsor would be Senator Villavalla, is in the midst of doing that. So I wanted to give an update on that. It's not parental leave, but paid family medical leave. Given what's happened with COVID, President Biden has just extended some of that paid family medical leave under the COVID emergency conditions that we have as well. But there is a lot of national discussion now making this permanent, paid family medical leave insurance program at the federal level. So a lot of that does depend on the federal level, but there still continues to be deliberations at the state level as well, because it does impact most especially women in the workforce. It's been impacting women out of work, what we know as the she-cession. For COVID is how women are disproportionately impacted. And we know that there is a gender wealth gap already for women, and it's worse for women of color disproportionately when we see women retire as an indicator with 80, not 8, not 10, not even 20 times less, but 80 times less wealth than men do by age 65. And it's worse, again, for women of color. So going back to that Paid Family Medical Leave Act, it assures that individuals would continue to receive some sort of paycheck, and for others not lose their job if they should need to take off a considerable amount of time more than they would need for paid sick days or vacation to take care of themselves or a family member, a child, elder adult, and it really would expand the definition and be more inclusive of what family is defined as opposed to the previous medical leave or the current existing one as well. And then the third legislation is the Cooperative Economy Act as well. So as we move into this, I think maybe a way that we take our notes on this is legislation would be the how we would, is one of the hows we could accomplish our goals, in addition to examining some of the practices as well. And I just offer that up and what people's thoughts on that are, so that we look at the agenda, it's not just hanging there as to how does this all tie into what we're all convening about when we meet. And for the Cooperative Economy Act, I want to turn that over to Camille. If you want to weigh in on the status of that and how we see this group providing some guidance for the overall commission, and that would be helpful as well. I'm not as familiar with the Cooperative Economy Act.
That's a California bill. I don't know that there is one here. I think we just discussed it in the context of innovations that we could look at. So
Okay.
there's nothing pressing that we need to. If there is a time when you'd like me to go over that in more depth, I'm more than happy to, but it's not a existing Illinois or Cook County legislation.
Okay, I was wondering why it looked so new to me. So essentially, then maybe that doesn't fall under legislation, but under kind of context of what we want to take some lessons learned when we're looking at cooperative and shared economy, when we're talking about cooperatives in Illinois and what legislation we may possibly want to support. Again, realizing that there's usually an advocate that takes up the lead on many of these policy issues. And I don't know if necessarily we would take up the lead and start to create that piece of legislation, but if that does come about, we did talk about at the last convening the need to better educate ourselves on the different types of cooperatives that are out there. And I do recall, Camille, thank you, and appreciate it that you offered up doing a session in the future for the group on the different types of cooperatives that exist and how to navigate that when we have our discussions.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Is there anything else as to how we would, as in terms of policy or legislation, that we would want to review regarding a topic that fits into the goal of county resources such as procurement? And it sounds like we want to be more specific per Harry about growing MWBE contractors, or the second goal in regards to workforce development and opportunities from legislation, or even that wealth building component that Lynette referred to. Is there any other pieces of legislation or current policies that people want to share as we now move into, I know it's under old business, but it's been a few weeks since we last met, and session is going strong, and hearings are being held as we speak. Okay, I would like to add one of something that we're involved with, which speaks to what Lynette was talking about, wealth building capacity. We are involved with a coalition, the Illinois Cash Refund Coalition, which one of the pieces of legislation, there's two bills sponsored by Senator L.G. Sims and Representative Carol Ammons, to expand the state earned income credit for those who are low and moderate income. Essentially, it would be putting cash back into people's pockets and expanding that credit for those who are currently eligible for the federal earned income tax credit to people who are ages 18 to 24. Those individuals are actually not eligible for the credit. And surprisingly, we also don't afford that credit to people over age 65. So it would be expanding the Illinois state earned income credit for those who are already eligible for the federal earned income credit, expanding it to individuals in those ages for the first year. And the second year, it would also be expanding it for a child tax giver credit, a caregiver credit, sorry, for a child, qualified adult dependent, or a disabled dependent as well. So it would further provide more funding in people's pockets, more money in people's pockets that would also help with COVID recovery as well. And I wanted to put that forth as a consideration. We've at Small Business Majority have a sign-on letter that we're about to launch. There's a hearing tomorrow and a press conference that we're going to be participating in with other organizations such as Women Employed, philanthropic groups such as the Chicago Community Trust as well, and other organizations that are looking at expanding the earned income tax credit to make sure that people don't fall into abject poverty and to keep our economy going, so that they could use that funding, that extra dollars to spend for their necessities and at local small businesses as well. And I can send fact sheets on that, but I wanted to offer that up for discussion if anybody had any questions, to also consider that as a how through policy to support from this group and to offer up to the commission. Any comments, or do people have questions about what the earned income credit is?
When does that begin, Jerry?
It's being heard in the House tomorrow, and there's a press conference tomorrow as well. There have been articles in the Tribune. We're hearing that the governor is supportive of this as well, especially since the fair tax was not able to pass this year. So this would be an anti-poverty tool policy to keep people out of poverty, while also making sure they get a refund on expanding the number of individuals who are eligible for that refund as well also. And then expanding it in the second year to caregivers with qualifying incomes and who have a qualified child, adult, or disabled dependent.
It sounds very good.
So I guess for our notes, I could send around information on the expansion of the earned income credit so people can review that. And maybe, I know there are rules about how we communicate with one another on supporting such legislation, Victoria, as a commission, but like I said, the governor is supportive of this. We're getting a lot of good bipartisan support for it. Again, because the fair tax didn't pass, this is another policy tool that could be expanded to prevent people from falling into true abject poverty with the expanding the earned income credit. Also, many individuals don't even claim it and they're eligible. So it would be a push for investments into promoting that would be helpful for people during COVID recovery.
Great. Welcome, Karen. So, Jerry, I think what we can do is we can share information across the committee. It's just how we communicate. Just be mindful of replying to all is the only piece of that. But people could put in anyway. But that's the main thing we need to be concerned about. Are there other, I guess, as we're going down the list of other legislative things, Sophie or other folks, that the food depository is promoting that would be supportive of protecting income and as folks are recovering?
Yeah, we our legislative agenda focuses mostly on nutrition assistance programs. We certainly lend support to other legislation where we're not necessarily the policy lead. So there are a few bills that we're monitoring. I think, there's a lot of opportunity at the state agency level too, with making sure that COVID waivers continue to be extended and utilized. And of course, we're doing a lot of federal advocacy around COVID relief and making sure that waivers and funding are in place to help support families, not just on nutrition, but with unemployment insurance, housing, utility relief. We're excited to see that the child tax credit expansion was included. So a range of policies, but nothing really actionable related to at the state level at this point that I want to raise.
Okay, thank you. And I did move into the shared file, working on getting the notes over there, Google Drive for this committee, and also the county's resolution in support of the Clean Energy Jobs Act that the Board of Commissioners passed last week. So that's available for review as well. Is there anything else you wanted on regarding legislation and the old business conversation that Karen was able to join us?
No, I think that's it in terms of policy and legislation that would impact us, moving forward with realizing the goals that we outlined. And Karen, thanks for joining, because we put a pause on reviewing one of our goals, saying let's put a pause on refining it until Karen comes on, because it has to do with the workforce. So thank you.
No worries, happy to be here. Roger asked me to do a little bit of a presentation this afternoon, and I'm happy to dive in whenever you all are ready for me to do that.
That would be great. Victoria, could you make Karen able to share screen? Perfect, thank you.
Okay, give me just a moment. Let me make sure I'm all set up here. All right. All right, can you see? Yep, good to go. Okay, so I was asked to give you a little bit of an update about what we're doing in the public workforce system right now. I think you all may recall that I did a presentation to the larger commission last year sometime, and I'll talk to you a little bit about our pandemic response, about some of the business engagement that we're seeing right now, as well as some key areas of focus for us in this upcoming year. And then just stop me at any time to answer any questions that you might have. So as you all know, a year ago last week, everything just sort of stood on its head, right? The world turned in a totally different manner than we ever expected before. And we had to jump into a responsive mode to address the record number of unemployment claims. There have been to date 1.4 million unemployment insurance claims in our region since last March. We've also lost 350,000 jobs from our economy, jobs that are likely not coming back. And so the need for workforce development services is greater now than ever before. So a couple of things. So we were able to access humanitarian and disaster relief funds through the Illinois Department of Commerce, which actually flows from the Department of Labor. And so we were able to assist some community-based organizations that actually were using volunteers to provide disaster relief. So whether it was food support, packaging food, distributing it to seniors, working with homeless population, staffing emergency shelters, folks were volunteering, and we were able to actually use funding to create temporary transitional jobs. So to shift those folks from volunteering to actually earning wages up to $24 an hour for those in supervisory positions. We also had to do a lot of rapid response to employers. We had more than 50 companies that applied for supportive funding, and I'll talk about that in greater detail in a few moments. And then we pivoted all of our services to virtual and online provision. We took our digital literacy programming and made that online virtual access. We created a Work Now page on our webpage that was able to tell people, look, there are still jobs, despite the fact there's this great, massive layoffs and shutdowns, there were still employment opportunities. And so we had to really pivot ways to promote these hiring opportunities and initiatives to people. We also, as you probably know, and I believe this is what we last presented on, we also have responsibility serving as the lead coordinating organization for the city's COVID-19 response corps. And so it was the contact tracing corps, but the reality is that in recent months, this group has pivoted from just doing contact tracing to actually scheduling vaccination appointments and staffing the vaccine pods. So we brought on over 30 community-based organizations in high economic hardship communities. And through those CBOs, around 600 individuals were hired to serve as contact tracers. And as I said, we've got about 200 of them now serving as vaccine schedulers. As of last night, they had done more than 90,000, fielded more than 90,000 calls since March 4th. So it's just really phenomenal work that they're doing. And then another 200 of them are actually staffing the vaccination pods and providing supportive services to people who walk in. The other feature of that initiative is an Earn and Learn initiative, and I'll talk about that in a moment. With respect to the Cook County Department of Public Health, we've been asked to source 150 contact tracers, supervisors, and case investigators as well. And then the common thread between both sides of the house is our Earn and Learn initiative. And so the Earn and Learn initiative allows us to take these folks who are in these temporary jobs, because this is going to end at some point. We will be out from under COVID and we won't need contact tracing. And so when they finish that, we didn't want these folks to just join the ranks of the unemployed. And so what we did was partner with a host of different organizations, such as UIC School of Public Health, Malcolm X College, which has the healthcare focus for the City Colleges of Chicago, Sinai Urban Health Institute, to prepare folks for careers within the healthcare field. So, and offer them a wide variety of options, and the funding that is there to cover the cost of the training to allow folks to go on to get credentials and certifications that would allow them to enjoy permanent employment. And then we're also partnering with employers to make those connections. This is our staff actually volunteering at vaccine pods and also getting their shots. Another piece with respect to the pandemic response has been partnering with Cook County and for job training and placement, utilizing CARES Act funding. So we've done a number of different things there. We've been able to fund training for nearly 500 individuals. We have also participated in an early warning network pilot, which is focused on manufacturing, so that you begin to see those warning signs that a company is flagging and be able to craft responses that will enable them to stay afloat. The employer engagement, which will be a little bit more detailed in another slide. And then with the city, we created shyserves.com, which is a website and texting platform for the hospitality and restaurant community to basically connect with those workers, to let them know about other hiring opportunities, and to give them access to continued employment or occupational training if they wanted to make a shift in terms of their careers. This is a number of outreach efforts that we have launched in the past year as a result of the pandemic, from an 800 number to the Work Now page that I mentioned earlier, to actually doing standing programming on Univision. It's a Monday morning program called Primera Hora, where we are able to go on and actually speak to the Spanish-speaking public around the services and resources that are available We've had text campaigns, just a number of different ways of reaching out to folks. On business services, as of February, we've got over 1,700 job orders representing about 4,900 different positions in 1,400 job titles. And we've partnered with and served over nearly 1,000 businesses in the past year. And we're also focusing on these virtual hiring events as well, with a number of elected officials as well as employers and the state. We've also been focused on some on-the-job training initiatives. We serve both job seekers and employers. And so the demand for employer support and assistance has actually not flagged given the pandemic. It's just shifted in terms of the industries. And so you'll see on this, typically we have about twice this much that's gone into on-the-job training initiatives. And what you'll see is mostly manufacturing and construction have really asked for some additional assistance with skilling up their workforce and bringing on new staff. These grants represent incumbent worker training, so it's upskilling the existing workforce as well as the utilization of CARES Act dollars. And we've had about 52 applications in this category, representing about $3.5 million of support for employers. And so far, about $2.2 million has already been distributed. We've had a number of different new initiatives. As you all may be aware, we opened our Chatham Education and Workforce Center in January. It's an 11,000 square foot state-of-the-art workforce development and training center. We have our first Maker Lab of its type on the south side of Chicago. The facility is located at 79th and Champlain, so right in the commercial corridor. And we have a number of different supporters and investors in that project. Forest Bay Partners, Steve and Jessica Sarowitz, Blue Cross Blue Shield, ComEd, Uber, Verizon. We've had a number of contributions, Fifth Third Bank, and we're in some discussions right now with Discover, which is also opening up a facility just a few blocks away. So we'll be helping with staffing for that space and supporting some of their training efforts as well. So a couple of new initiatives that you can expect to be coming down the pike. I just referenced Discover. They'll be hiring about 125 to 150 people this year, but they expect to grow to 1,000 people by 2024 at their new Chatham Customer Care Center. We're also working on a pilot with the Association of Supply Chain Management, which offers a very short-term intensive training to put people into the supply chain management roles. And they tell us that for every 6 positions they have, they're only able to fill 1. And so we are working on training cohorts for them at all of our locations throughout the city and the county to really help them with their labor needs, but to also make sure that we're putting in folks from our communities, because these are pretty lucrative roles that are beyond subsistence wages. The other thing that we're assisting the city of Chicago with is the capital plan. And so the mayor will be making an announcement in the next couple of weeks around infrastructure investment, local infrastructure investment, and local hiring. Coordinated reentry pilot. We have, over the past year, stood up a coordinated reentry council. This council has focused on the needs of returning residents. So those folks who have been incarcerated, who are coming back to community. What we know is that about 60% of the folks in Illinois prisons are returning to Cook County. And in Cook County, they're going to about 15 cities and 12 neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. That's where the bulk of folks are returning to. And so we know this is a racial equity issue because we know that there's a disproportionate number of Black and brown men who are incarcerated. And we also know it's a workforce development and economic issue because of incarceration being seen as a barrier to employment. And so with our council, which met for 8 months last year, we developed some policy recommendations for systemic change. Those recommendations fall into 2 different categories. One is around system reform, and integration of services, ensuring that there is a continuum of care when folks are returning to community. And the other set of recommendations really have to do with employment. This graphic just sort of represents, the siloed, isolated way in which the reentry is sort of handled now, and what we're seeking to create with a coordinated service system where there's a continuum of care wrapped around those individuals. This represents some of the recommendations with respect to the employment side of the house and ensuring that we're doing pre-release career planning and training, pre-release preparation for job placement, and also assessments around what are people's skills and ensuring that we are preparing folks for a more successful pathway to reconnect to community. Towards that end, on April 21st, we are hosting an event called A Higher Calling. We'll be featuring Jeff Korzenik, who is the Chief Investment Strategist for Fifth Third Bank. He's got a book coming out in the next couple of weeks called Untapped Talent. In that book, he makes the business case for why employers need to be hiring returning residents. We also have David Snyder from the Economic Club serving as our Master of Ceremonies, and we'll have welcome remarks from the Mayor and Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. So I hope that you all will be able to join us. We'll make sure that you get the formal invitation, and we are giving away a copy of Jeff's book to the first 100 registrants. We also released last week our RFP for our American Job Centers. And this gives you a little bit of the timeline. So it was released last week. The review period will be in April and May. We'll be making decisions in June and issuing awards. And this RFP is going to focus on service integration, racial equity, and the ability of an organization to deliver virtual services given the pandemic. I also mentioned all the virtual hiring events that we're doing. This is just a smattering of them. There's a lot happening online to get people connected and reconnected to the labor force. And then finally, we have been working on our policy agenda. We'll be focusing on some key special populations, as well as state and federal workforce policy and economic policy. And one of the things specifically that President Preckwinkle asked for us to focus on is that fight for the increase in the minimum wage as well. So our economic policy touches on job quality, skills training and credentialing, and then really communicating labor market and economic information to all of the stakeholders, as well as the people that we serve. So the other thing I'd lift up is that we certainly will have a renewed focus on racial equity as well as digital equity. Given the fact that we all know, you can't work remotely if you don't have access to quality broadband, and you can't work remotely if you don't have access to a device that can actually be sustained on that platform. So, so I'll stop there and answer any questions you all might have.
Hi, Karen. I'll jump in first. Thank you for joining and providing this overview. This is very, very helpful and informative for me. So I appreciate that. I'm curious, I sort of have a two-part question, somewhat unrelated. I'm curious to know how many of the employers that you work with that are, seeking some sort of, talent solutions, how many of those are small businesses? Or do you kind of, I don't know if you have this off the top of your head, but I'm just wondering if you have a sense of the typical employers that you all are working with, and if those tend to kind of fall into a certain profile, or if you are working with smaller employers, and particularly minority owned entities, if there are certain types of talent solutions that they come seeking assistance for.
So we work with any and everybody. We have worked with Walmart down to Brown Sugar Bakery, right? So from the biggest to a small, but mighty and delicious, a small business. And so off the top of my head, I can't tell you the percentage breakdown, and it ebbs and flows. When you look at the breakdown by community, at the community level, a lot of them are small and medium-sized businesses. And so the talent solutions that folks need really vary. And I'll tell you the challenge is, our perception on this side of the table has always been that employers know exactly what they need and want. And that is actually not necessarily true. Sometimes they have an idea of what they need and want, but they also need some coaching, or they need exposure to an array of talent solutions before they say, oh, that one actually makes sense for me. So some of our smaller companies might just need 1 or 2 people, but then we expose them to the opportunity to access on-the-job training funds. And they realize they might have actually more capacity to bring on more people because on-the-job training funds help to subsidize those training wages. And so it really varies. We have a number of tools in the toolkit to share with employers, and then it's up to them to make the decision around what fits best for their particular business model. We don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. We really sit with employers, discern what their hiring needs are, or just their overall talent needs. We might bring them labor market information. We've had situations where employers come to us and they say, well, I'm willing to pay $9 an hour. And we say, that's not the market rate. And you just told me that you have a high turnover problem and you're looking for people to persist. Well, I bet you if you raise the wages, here's what the market rate is for that particular role. If you raised your wages, you would probably have greater persistence. Let's talk about what your challenges really are and we'll help you fix those, right? So I hope that roughly answers your question, Lynette.
No, it does. That's helpful. That was just one of the things I was thinking about as you were going through your slides. And because this committee has talked about specifically how can we be supporting MWBE enterprise and some of the levers to help the county make sure that they're leveraging its resources and authority to do that as well. I was just curious about any particular insights that you're seeing from your perspective around what some of those needs have looked like, at least on the talent solutions side of things. The other, oh, I'm sorry, did you?
No, I was just going to say one of the things that we hear from people time and time again is, they don't have to have all the skills in the world. I just need people who are going to show up consistently and want to be here, and we can't teach intrinsic motivation, but we can definitely work with people around workplace comportment and understanding the soft skills that are needed in order to be successful in an environment. But go ahead, you had another question.
The other question was in reference to one of the numbers. I think you said that in the last year, the region has lost, did you say 350,000?
150,000.
Don't think are coming back. I was just curious, roughly where do those jobs fall in terms of kind of the industry sectors? I would have some assumptions, but I don't want to assume. And I'm also wondering, you talked about some of the earn and learn initiatives for, particularly within the health sector. Is that where you're seeing, that it's clear that that's one of the priority industries that you all are focusing on? Is that where you're seeing some shifting from some of these jobs that are going away, perhaps in other industries, and trying to transition folks over into the health sector and others? I'm just kind of curious, like where is that loss occurring, and where are you seeing the shift in opportunities in terms of industry sectors?
Yeah, so we focused on the 7. So there's 7 sort of buckets of sectors that fuel the local economy. So manufacturing, TDL, let's see if I can get them all 7, y'all. Manufacturing, TDL, healthcare, hospitality, retail, and culinary, we kind of lump in together, construction, information technology, and business and professional services. So that's what really kind of fuels this region, right? Obviously, the greatest area of job shed has been in the hospitality, retail, culinary sector, because we've all been shut in and not able to actually go out and sort of, enjoy those types of things. What we're seeing is an uptick across every sector, but some upticks are greater than in others. So there's an uptick in manufacturing, significant uptick in TDL. So when you think about it, we're all at home and we're ordering our goods and having things delivered to us, right? So there's a huge uptick in TDL. And then IT, I mean, information technology is super important because of everybody's need to be connected, whether it is us as workers or our kids because they're in school. And then there's telehealth added to that. Healthcare, there's certainly an increased demand for obvious reasons as well. So we're not pushing people into any particular thing. We're saying, here's the information that's available to you. Here's the data. Here's what the market is showing us. And you also have to think about what sectors are sort of pandemic proof, if you will, like which sectors didn't take a hit but saw an increase. So IT, healthcare for sure, manufacturing, TDL, those have seen a steady increase, even though there may have been companies that went by the wayside. There's still a demand for the skills in those particular industries.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Camille, you had a question or a comment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'd love to just be in touch. I helped found Shy Fresh Kitchen, which is a worker cooperative that's co-owned by formerly incarcerated individuals. And we'd love to connect to your training and other offerings that you have. But on that note too, I'm just wondering to what extent, if any, our council has talked about cooperatives as a way to drive wealth, not just living wages or subsistence wages, as you mentioned. Are cooperatives currently, I know they're not part of like the bullet points listed, but are they anyway part of your strategy? Is that something that you might all be interested in thinking about as part of, especially when it comes to formerly incarcerated folks? In one context piece, one of the things that we found is even people have the training and the skills and the abilities that after 90 days, once background comes back, at least for people with a felony record, they get let go, even if they are perfect workers, right? So that 90 days, you're cycling, and if you're really good, you're cycling through job after job after job. And so that's one of the reasons we are creating our own businesses that are co-owned by workers, by formerly incarcerated folks. So I'm just wondering if that either entrepreneurship or specifically cooperative entrepreneurship is part of any part of your plan.
Yeah. So thank you. And we should connect, Camille. I actually just put my email address in the chat thread. So one of the challenges is that the federally funded training programs still haven't figured out how to bring in entrepreneurship as sort of a recognized area that the funds can be used for. So we've been in discussions with the Women's Business Development Center and others. And, a couple of years ago, the Department of Labor did a pilot project, a demonstration project, if you will, with respect to entrepreneurship. And then it went away, and we've not been allowed to use the funding for that purpose since then. I would love to have some discussions with you from a policy perspective around how that model makes sense in the context of returning residents and others, quite frankly. But I definitely would love to engage with you around that. But right now, it's just from a policy perspective, we're not able to use the dollars around entrepreneurship. But we should talk about some of the flexible funding with respect to serving the reentry population. I'd love to have that conversation.
I had a question too about it includes young people. Some of them have been in trouble with the law. Some of them haven't. Mm-hmm. But I was just wondering about youth employment, for those young people who are 16, 17, 18, some of them in their 20s, who, again, some of them have had trouble, have been in trouble with the law, some of them haven't. But, obviously with this economy, those ranks have been just decimated. And that was just, you got a lot of great things going on, but I was thinking specifically about youth employment? And is there something that, just want to get your thoughts on what's happening there?
Yeah, so we serve north of 4,000 young adults a year in our programming. And from a federal policy perspective, we have to focus on out of school youth predominantly. So a couple of years ago, the federal policy shifted and said, all of your youth funding, 75% of it has to go to out of school youth, and the balance to the remaining 25% to in school youth. And in your local areas, you can change those thresholds higher, but not lower. And so for us, we did an evaluation of what we were putting our youth dollars on. And we also looked at the problem of opportunity youth within this region and found that we had nearly 90,000 young people between the city and the county between the ages of 18 and 24 who were out of school and out of work. More than 55% of those young people had actually completed high school. So they did what we tell them as a society they need to do, right? And they finished everything they were supposed to do, and they still didn't have any place to go. And so we partnered with a number of different organizations who are really just laser focused on this issue of opportunity youth and coming up with solutions to bring it down. And I'll tell you, part of the reason I was late to this call was because I was on a call with an employer talking about fashioning some opportunity youth solutions. So we serve about 4,000. We found when we analyzed our data that we were already putting 80% of our youth funding into opportunity youth. So we continued with that. And I think the last time I checked the data, we were putting about 83% of our youth dollars specifically into that population. We have a host of different initiatives, but what we have found to be tremendously successful in this population is focusing on work-based learning, hands-on experiential opportunities, career exploration, and career exposure. So the mayor frequently says you can't be what you can't see, and it's true. And so that exploration and exposure gives kids the opportunity to see possibility and to see themselves in these pathways and in the final destination on those pathways. So we created a program at the request of President Preckwinkle called Opportunity Works, and we use completely unrestricted county money and other dollars that we've been able to raise. And we have graduated over 1,000 young people from this program. We have a 90% success rate. It is 8 weeks, it's intensive. We provide a stipend, there's a mentor, there's a supervisor, it's cohort-based. We have over 150 employers that are engaged in this initiative that have, a menu of options available to them on how they engage with youth, from sponsoring site visits to putting on panels to hosting interns on site. And what we found is once they get into these internships, we can't keep them in there because the employers are snatching them up and picking them up. And to me, aside from the economic impact for our young people, to me, one of the greatest benefits of these types of initiatives is shifting employer mindset, recognizing that there is talent and potential and strength in our Black and Brown youth, and shifting their mindset around what it means to be from the South or West Side of Chicago, or the South suburbs or West suburbs in Cook County.
Thanks, Karen, for that. And to the earlier question regarding entrepreneurship, I've been in discussions at Small Business Majority with our partners like Sunshine Enterprises and WBDC on how can we at least increase the exposure of the small business ecosystem and those links with the workforce center, so that those who are going in for training under WIOA funds, at least there is more visibility by the trainers to refer them to Small Business Majority's trainings, WBDC's trainings, Scale Up and such, so that those individuals, if they're not going to be hired at an employer, will start to begin to learn the skills of how to be their own boss as a 1099, as a sole proprietor, as they wish, because we talked about the wealth gap earlier in our meeting this hour, and it was owning a business is the second best way to closing, to earning wealth next to owning a home. And I know from our partnership with our organization, with our offices in California, there's been a little bit of more collaboration with the innovative centers, I believe what they're called. But would like to know, what can be done with the partnership to, if there is a limitation, how entrepreneurship is addressed under federal funds, what are other mechanisms for that exposure to the small business ecosystem to support those workers and create jobs?
Yeah, so the limitation is around training people to be entrepreneurs. There is no limitation on supporting entrepreneurs with respect to talent pipeline development or on-the-job training funds or any of the business resources that are available under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, Jerry. All of those things still exist. It's exclusively about using the WIOA dollars for entrepreneurial training, because typically what's required is that people are training in an area that's going to yield a credential or a certification that has value in the marketplace, right? And so it's really trying to respond to market demand in that way. So that's the challenge with respect to the entrepreneurial training. But in terms of promoting the services of the system to entrepreneurs, by all means have at it. Let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about how folks who have small businesses can really leverage these tools to build up an apprenticeship base, to really create the next entrepreneur in their system, and to create the next staff person, the next manager, the next accountant. So by all means, we should promote the use of these dollars, the business resource for small and medium-sized employers, for sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. I co-direct the Chicago Inclusive Growth Coalition with Allies for Community Businesses. I keep wanting to say Axiom, but Brad is like, we're changing our name. We got to get used to it.
Okay.
And it has come up with some of the EDs and myself is, how can we better strengthen that promotion of the services that we collectively provide when we all meet to support folks who are getting that certification, that, this is another dimension that you could learn these additional skills, even if you do go work for an employer-based firm, to have a side hustle and thereby increase that ability to supplement your income as well with the skills that you're learning under the WIOA funds. Thank you. Does anybody else, we have about 8 minutes left. If anybody else has any questions, I want to turn it over to Roger also.
Karen, we've been talking about, thanks, Jerry. We've been talking about, trying to figure out our agenda as a committee and what we can help support. And again, one of the big things folks have been thinking about is workforce development that can lead into entrepreneurship pathways that could potentially take advantage of procurement opportunities with the county as kind of some of the more direct links. In terms of policy recommendations or things that you still find are gaps that could be needed to help accelerate what you all are doing, to really end with, with a heavy focus on equity and all of this. What are some of the things that you think are still missing that we could help complement or help accelerate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the procurement piece is really important. How do we create more opportunity amongst the small and medium-sized employers to be of service to the county, leveraging their skills and their talents. I think the other piece is around promoting the whole host of resources that are out there. We work in these silos, and so often I tell people that the reason they don't know about the public workforce system is because they've been blessed to not need it. You haven't been on unemployment, or, so you haven't been referred to one of our centers. And then some of it does have to do with marketing and us making sure that we are visible, that people know that the tools are out there. So I think, Roger, one of the things that this body can do, as a subset of the Social Innovation Council, is to really focus on how do we inform our communities and all of the different stakeholders about all of the many resources that exist. There's so many businesses out there that are struggling who don't know where to go in order to get the supports that they need. And so it's really about taking that megaphone and amplifying that message across multiple platforms so that people are aware of the resources. Similarly, people need to be aware of what it means to competitively bid for contracts with the county and the city. And I think maybe that's something that we as a committee can begin to think about, like how do we promote those opportunities, and how do we not just promote them, but help people actually get prepared for them so that they will become successful bidders. Does that answer your question?
And in terms of contracts, so there's kind of having businesses meet where the RFPs are currently structured.
Mm-hmm.
Are there things to talk about and push the county on in terms of how RFPs are structured, the size and scale of them, the kind of size appropriateness to match, to be broken apart, like for the county to be like, we'll take on a little bit of extra, we'll take on some extra work to make sure that what we're putting out there is actually matching where businesses are currently.
So Roger, don't get me in trouble now. I
Everybody, we all have room for improvement with this.
Right. No, I'm with you. So I think that before we can say you should break apart these bigger contracts into smaller ones, we need to have a deeper understanding. People have lots of opinions on how things should be done, but I will tell you now, having been on the other side of city and county and state and federal government for the past 25 years, is real easy to have an opinion when you don't have all of the depth of knowledge and the details and the information. There's a lot of things that I think should and could be made easier, but bureaucracy bogs those things down. And so maybe we need to spend some time looking at what are the bureaucratic steps that are in the way, and make some recommendations. I'll just use my organization as an example. We 10 years ago or so were struggling with on-the-job training dollars, getting the dollars out, getting them utilized. And I get a call from a board member, horrifying call, saying that we had not paid, had not done the reimbursement to an employer. And as I tried to find out what was going on, it turned out we had, no exaggeration, it was like 27 steps that had to be completed in order to get this person paid. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Who wants to do that? Like, this is unattractive to an employer. Nobody has time for that. So we reduced it to 7 steps, and 5 of those 7 steps are on us, not on the employer. And so there are probably lots of minor things that become big barriers when compounded, right? And if we could remove some of those, it might make the process easier for people. There may be some contracts that could be broken down, but it may not be as efficient as we think to break it down. And so I think we could do some more exploration to really understand and make some recommendations around which ones it makes sense to disaggregate and which ones make sense to leave as they are. And then what are the barriers that we could remove, the obstacles we could remove in order to make things more easily accessible for community members.
Thanks, Karen. Well, thanks everybody, and thank you for the great presentation and conversation. I think it generated a lot of good thinking and some ways that we can start moving forward more directly, and some new connections. And obviously, folks have a much better, a deeper, richer understanding of all the amazing work you guys have been doing at the Workforce Partnership. So thank you for sharing all that today.
Thank you.
And look forward to continuing that in the next meeting. So our next meeting will be on the April 28th, 3 to 4:30. We'll get those calendar invites out in a bit more in advance for the next few meetings, as we're still working out the kinks of the transition online. Jerry, anything else before we adjourn the meeting for today?
No, it's been very helpful, Karen, especially your emphasis on a recommendation of looking at how we can increase opportunities for small and medium businesses to do business through procurement and contracts through more training and how to actually engage in that. I know at Small Business Majority, when we had conducted focus group sessions in the construction industry, that was holding back many of the micro businesses of who do residential and small construction, and they're 5 or less, the rest are 1099s they hire, was the inability to understand contracting and how to actually bid, which goes back to their financials. So maybe there's something there that we could flesh out that goal a little bit more refined and make some recommendations with the county. And it's very helpful for you to recommend, let's look at the processes too, as to what some of the steps are along the way to make it more simpler as well. So thank you, we appreciate that.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Enjoy, well, not the sun, but the bright gray that we have today that's somewhat warmer than the last few weeks. And we'll talk to you soon in the next month.
Great.
All right.